Welcome back. This is going to be a little bit of an interesting episode. Um, as you can see, we got the engine wiring harness laid out on the table. So the whole idea is, there's the old beast herself. So basically, the whole idea is, I wanted to show you this. I forgot to show you guys this the other day, but I managed to get a brand new range switch for the Mitzi. Brand spanking new. Look at that. Walker Vehicle Electronics. Never really heard of them before, but it's made in Japan, so that makes me happy because that obviously means the quality is good. Yeah, I got it from Rock Auto, so all the stuff I got from Rock Auto. It's actually been a legendary place to get parts for this Pajero from. I mean, if you go on the site, you don't see Pajero, but you see Montero. It's the same thing. It's just obviously get in the box. There we go. It's just obviously badged differently for regional purposes. I think Pajero means like penis or something like that. I'm not too sure. But anyway, somebody can correct me on that. Regardless of that. So what we're going to be doing today is removing stuff from this factory wiring harness that we don't need. So essentially, I'm going to be using the factory wiring harness. I'm just going to refurbish it, tidy it up a bit, give it new sheathing and installation, and repair any damaged wires and stuff like that I see, and clean it up. You can see here that I've already labeled each connector, what it's for, where it's going, what it does, and yeah, that's just as I strip it down, I can keep sort of track of what I'm doing and so on and so forth. This I'm pretty sure is the connector that's for the power supply that would probably go into the vehicle's body harness, and then these three connectors here go into the ECU. My old ECU that I had, which is this one here, from a 50252, which is an LS400, but don't ask me if it's Japanese, probably Japanese domestic market. I don't know. If you want to know like the intricate sort of details regarding what ECU is where and what it does, there's a channel on YouTube called Cartoon Company. Cartoon, so like car and then TUNE. It's a guy named Calvin Glover. He's got a lot of information. He's kind of like a 1UZ, 3UZ guru. He's got so much information. So I've purchased a whole bunch of products from him, as well as a little bit of information regarding some of the things that I didn't know or couldn't find on the internet, or maybe was too lazy to go bother looking. And yeah, he's really helpful in the sense of you can message him and he gives you advice and stuff, so long as you obviously pay him, which is fine, because obviously you should get paid for whatever your product is you're selling, be it a service or assistance or an actual physical product. But anyway, yeah, so that ECU is completely shot. That ECU is dead. It had a whole bunch of capacitors that blew in it. You can see that they had taken the capacitors out, or previous owners of, or maybe they sent it in for repair, I'm not too sure, but they had taken the capacitors out, removed them in order to replace them, because these ECUs have sort of a known issue where the capacitors get old and they leak onto the PCB board. But that PCB board got completely corroded, or the fluid that came out of the capacitor was corrosive. It ate up the PCB board. It's pretty much non-repairable. So he gave me a remand unit. As you can see there, it says rebuild tested October 2023, a late non-VVTi Celsius, and a manual swap unit. And you can see the plug connections are white. Once again, if you want to get into the details of that, go on his page. I highly recommend his YouTube channel. His videos are not very long, so he doesn't ramble on about stuff like that. He's pretty entertaining and a funny guy, and yeah, it's a good YouTube channel. It's kind of a hidden gem, if I'm honest, and it probably deserves a lot more traffic. Yeah, so essentially we got to get this ready to be mounted up to that so that we can strap it up to this bad boy and we can bench test the V8, which I'm sure everybody, including myself, is extremely excited to do. Excuse me if I'm acting funny, I didn't get much sleep. But this is essentially the plan. Sorry, farmer came around. Where was I? Oh yeah, bench testing the V8. I've also got to do EGR delete. I can't remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure that Calvin told me that this is non-EGR, or it's had an EGR system removed via firmware or something like that. I can't remember, as well as I think the immobilizer has already been taken care of, or if it's a Japanese unit, it doesn't have an immobilizer. Once again, go watch his videos on the ECUs. He goes into more detail. It's actually a lot complex than a lot of people think, because I was told that, oh, if it's white connectors, it's Japanese, or it's or it is emo or non-emo, or it is only Japanese or whatever. But that turns out to not be the case. It's a lot more complex than that. But essentially what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be removing the stuff we don't need. So like the range switch for the transmission, the speed sensor connectors, this is also for the transmission at the back, I believe. Yeah, so that I'm pretty sure is also, not too sure what that's for. But anyway, we're going to be removing that. You can see I've already pulled through a piece of the harness all the way to here, and then I'll be deepening it. And then as well as we'll be taking the EGR connector off and whatever else here, and then turning our attention to this, because there was another thing that I was concerned about, was I couldn't find my alternator connector, which was a small worry, but we'll deal with it later. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be doing. Yeah, I hope to make it as enjoyable as possible, but not boring and delayed and so on and so forth. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it, and thanks for watching. Okay, so I'll quickly give you guys a rundown on how I'm doing this and how exactly I remove the wiring from the harness without actually cutting and splicing and removing everything. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to deepen this connector. Anyway, I mean, I could just cut it off because this connector is totally trash, so you could just cut this off here and then pull it through. But for the sake of educational purposes, because, you know, the more you know, I'll show you guys how to deepen it, and then how I remove it out the harness, and then also how I deepen it from the main harness. So basically what you do is each connector will have a lock. I don't know if you can see, but this connector itself is gray, and in the middle of the connector, I don't know if that's out of focus, but in the middle of the connector is a little white slot here. This white slot excuse me, is the lock. Inside of the connector will be two release clips, so two clips that sit down on top of the connector and hold the on top of the connector, two release clips that sit on top of the pins or the terminals and hold the terminals in place, so you can pull on the back here and it won't come out. It'll also have a secondary lock. This lock is basically there to make sure that if those two retaining clips move up from any, for whatever reason, movement, vibration, whatever, the terminals won't be dislodged, they'll stay in their place. So it's basically like a two-pronged safety system, or locking mechanism, if you will. Here's a harness that I've already removed. All right, this is for the speed sensor for the transmission. If you look at the terminals, I don't want to show you and it's out of focus, but I don't know if you can see, Let me just see if this is working out properly. But if you look at the terminal, that right there, it's difficult to see because I'm trying to get this poor thing to focus. Anyway, but on top of the pin is a little slot. That's where the retaining lock goes in, or the retaining clip goes in that area there. So sorry, just messing around with the GoPro. Yeah, so essentially you're lifting that clip up and pulling the terminal out, if that makes sense. So this is a female terminal. Obviously the male terminal is just a slide pin that goes inside of it. All right, so how we're going to do that is a knife or anything pretty thin and sharp you can use, but just be careful not to damage the connector if you're reusing it. I'm not really worried, so I wouldn't recommend using a knife if you're repairing a connector or if you're just doing wiring repairs, because you may damage this. This is completely I'm not worried about it. But anyway, so we start by removing the lock. So we'll slide the lock up like so until it's out. It can only go in one way, so don't worry about that. Put the lock down. Now you can't really see inside of here, and I don't have a light. Just wait. So inside, I'm trying to use my phone to show you. Don't know if you can see it there, but just on top of the pin terminal, right over there on top here, you can see a little gray tab on the top. Those two tabs, you need something thin and flat to pull up, which will release that clip, allowing you to pull the terminal out. Now what I mean by that is, you normally get these depinning tools that are nice and they have a little handle, and you put them in and you can wedge it and then pull the terminal out. But if you don't have that, anything thin that you can maybe just shave down and into a point, like a flat point. This is a SIM card cap remover from a phone. All I did was take my Dremel tool, shave it at the bottom, till I got a nice till I got a nice flat sort of arrowhead shape, and then I just rounded the edges off, and then that allowed me to get this tool in here like I can now under the clip. I know you can't see this, it's kind of difficult because there's not much space, but under the clip, allowing me to hold it under tension, wedge it, and now I'm struggling. Oh, come on, man.
Stupid.
Anyway, like so. So putting the pin in and simultaneously in your hand using these three fingers to pull the pin back, or pull the wire back so that you pull the terminal out, and then essentially, that was kind of creepy. That's what the terminal looks like. This one will be a lot easier to see because we don't have as much, the pin is not so small, but this piece here is the terminal, part of the terminal I'm telling you, where that locking pin goes in. So it actually sits in this groove, so when you pull it back it locks like so. Let me use something that looks similar. So it'll sit on top, and when you pull back it will stop you from removing the terminal like so. You are actually raising that clip up, so you are essentially, you can't see like that either, but you are lifting the clip, you are lifting that clip up and then pulling it out. Now bearing in mind, don't forget to take this retainer lock out. A lot of times I've done this before, you forget to take this out, you end up damaging the retaining clips inside of here, because you keep wedging, pulling, and nothing and it doesn't, the terminal won't slide out because of this safety lock. So you need to remember to always remove the safety lock, then remove the terminal. I've done it before as well. I've been working on cars for 14 years of my life, and I've done it before. You get in emotion, you're rushing, whatever the reason might be, you're not paying attention, and you'll do that. You'll end up having to replace this plug because that retaining clip is not there anymore. The terminal maybe doesn't sit inside the plug correctly. You start getting connection issues. It can be a nightmare. So I'm going to carry on removing this one, then I'll show you how I'm going to pull it out the harness, and then yeah, you can carry on from there. Another piece of advice is, if you're doing this, don't pull on the terminal while you're trying to raise the clip, because what you'll do is you'll put your force against that retaining clip. You won't be able to flick it up. It's really just, I don't know if you can see in here, but it's really just two little plastic slides. This GoPro's not focusing, but two little plastic slides that just sit on top. It's nothing special, it's nothing fancy, it's just clever engineering and plastic. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead this wiring harness through. So I'm going to bring the GoPro a little bit closer. So essentially what you'd want to do, or what I do, is I'll move the harness out the way. Now I know it's a green and maybe a red or a dark pink wire, for example, right? But you'll find this is where it gets tricky. There is a lot of wires in here that will be the same color. For example, that's red, that's red, that's got a trace on, but that's red. So you can end up taking out the wrong wire if you're not careful. I don't know why I said wire like that. You can take out the wrong wire, boy. You can take out the wrong wire, boy. Back home in South Africa, we got a slang term. It says pulling wire. In reference to you jerking off, you're pulling wire. I mean, it's unnecessary information, but once again, the more you know, you know.
One eternity later.
Anyway, so I'm going to slide this through here, and I'm just going to be continuously pulling it and unraveling it from the wiring harness. When these engineers or the machines or whatever they use to create these wiring looms, they don't put all the wires sort of perfectly next to each other. A lot of them will be in between and entangled and wrapped around, and it is what it is. It doesn't need to be super neat because obviously it's covered by insulation and protective covering, so you don't need to see that. But conduiting, if you will, or trunking, or whatever you want to call it. What I have done is, you'll see here, I've put a tie strap here, or a zip tie here. I've also put a zip tie here. This is just to remind me that this is where the harness separates from the two. I may modify that at a later stage. This is to remind me where this trunking sits, because I'm going to reuse this. The reason I'm going to reuse this is obviously it's got mounting points where this mounts onto the engine, kind of at the back here. This goes there, so I believe it sits something like so, and it mounts there, it mounts there and there, and it just routes the harness nice and neat at the back. Obviously I'll be removing the EGR and performing EGR delete on this, but regardless, that's essentially the idea. So I'll be reusing that. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Alright, so now, as I was saying, falling all over the place, what I'll do now is, because the wiring will be in here, so what I will do is I'll be pushing it through. This one's a little bit tighter. Funny, when I want to show you guys how it is, there's always some sort of thing that happens, Murphy's Law, that makes it more difficult. But you'll see when I'm pushing and pulling it, the wire is moving here. Yeah, I found it just by pushing and pulling it. So there we are. There's my harness. Okay, so now I can continue to pull the harness through. You might want to do this one by one, because there will be this insulator or seal at the back. This is obviously to seal the plug. You'll see there's two different types of connectors you get on engine wiring harnesses. These connectors will, or the connectors that are exposed to the environment or outside in the engine compartment, underneath the car, anywhere that it's not sort of sealed off from the environment, rain, wind, sun, dust, dirt, debris, moisture, all that stuff, will have these seals at the back, as well as the connector, which I've thrown away, having a seal here. You can see that. That is to seal off any moisture from getting into this pin and into this connector. We all know that moisture and electronic terminals, contact problems, electrolysis, you'll end up with corrosion, the old green stuff, you know, the hulk of wiring problems, and you'll end up with connection issues, resistances, voltage drops, things like that. All right, so that's what that's for basically. A lot of internal plugs like this one and these, you can see will be inside of the passenger compartment of the cabin. I know this because there's no seals at the back, number one, and there's no seals on the connectors around the sides. Okay, easy way to determine or differentiate which one you're working with at the time. Okay, anyway, once again, back to your regularly scheduled program. So I'm going to pull this through now. I may have put this zip tie a little bit too tight. No, it's alright. And then the next one, you can move the wiring harness around. Don't be scared to manipulate it. You're not going to damage anything as long as you're not coming in here poking with screwdrivers and things like that. You're very unlikely to do damage to the wiring harness. Alright. I might do a video one day on wiring and sensors and connectors and stuff like that, just to pass on a bit of knowledge to people. All connectors and stuff are pretty much similar. You'll get some connectors with a lot of German cars that I work on. They'll have connectors which are really, really small, which are known as nano connectors. Those are a little bit different to remove. A lot of the time you actually have to disassemble the entire connector, which is a bit more involved, and you got to be a little bit more careful when doing that. It's just because the pins are very, very small, and yeah, so well, you just got to do your research before you mess with those connectors. I'll see if I can add a picture of what a nano connector looks like. But yes, if you ever come across one, just be very, very careful, because they're easy to damage, they're easy to bend, and yeah, not cheap connectors to replace. Anyway, moving along, we come across here, and we'll pull the harness out. So basically just following it, same thing, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, until I get to where I'm going, which is over here. Once again, out you come. And there, we've removed the entire wiring. This small loom, for which is probably also a speed sensor or some temperature sensor or whatever, and we've taken out the harness. I haven't adjusted the harness in any way. I haven't cut, spliced, or done anything in any way. I've just simply removed an unwanted circuit from the rest of the wiring harness. Now, once again, the same principle comes. Once again, the same principle here. Right? Now, these connectors are a little bit different. Same principle. There's a lock tab on top. You lift it up, pull the terminal out. There is a safety lock at the bottom. These safety locks don't come all the way out like the other one. The other one is fully removable. This isn't. The way you can tell, well, you never really can tell unless you've worked with the connector before. I didn't know. That's why you can see some of the sections I've actually damaged the plastic where it was brittle trying to remove it. But this cannot come all the way out. You'll see when you're wedging it lightly, you'll see that it sort of stays in place and you can't remove it. The other one that removed out completely, you can see it's easy. Once you start sliding it up, it gradually moves more and more and more until it comes out completely. Once again, just be very careful when you're working with connectors. It's not rocket science, but it does take a little bit of care and patience if you haven't done it a lot, or if you're doing it your first time. And if you're not sure, just Google it. Guarantee you'll find some YouTube video explaining this shit. Alright, So come through here, lift it up, pull it out. I've already released the safety latch or the secondary lock or whatever you want to call it. That's not its actual name, I just made that up because I'm a genius. Same principle. Grab the wire, hold it in hand. That's pin number 3 from the end. And we go in, lift. And out she comes. And then this one, which is directly below it, third from the end. So that would be there. And out she comes. And that's that, done. And you can keep these because the nice thing about these is the fact that they're pinned and they have terminals that are good and still in good condition. You can keep them. I'm going to keep them, use them again maybe one day. I need to wire in something, I need to add wiring, I need terminals and pins. I've got some. The other thing that I thought I would mention while we're here is some manufacturers, the German manufacturers I know for a fact, they'll put pin numbers on the front of the connector or the back of the connector. I see that the Japanese do it at the back. So there's pin 1, 12. So that also helps you identify what pin you're working at. When you're working with a wiring diagram, it'll tell you, for example, connector T5A and the pin number is 36. So you know that connector's number is T5A, which that's not this connector. I'm just using it for an example from an Audi. So T5A is the connector number, then you can find what connector it is, and then 37 will be the number. You go find 37, that's your terminal, you double check. The wiring diagram says it is a blue wire with a red tracer. You go look, you say, yes, it is a blue wire with a red tracer, just like that one right there. And then you say, okay, that's my wire, I'm on the right place. It is the signal return wire, is the 5-volt reference, earth, ground, whatever it is. You're on the right place and you can carry on. Also, another thing to keep in mind, I don't need to drag on about wiring and stuff, but I just think it's really important, and I like electronics and I find it very cool. You'll see that some wires have shielding. Let's have a look. Is there any wiring here that has shielding? I don't really see any. I think this is a shield. No, that's not it. I think this is a shielding wire. Yes, this is a shielding wire here. So shielding wire, let's do this, go away. So shielding wire like this, all right, it's wrapped up like this to help prevent interference. A lot of the times you'll find this on maybe certain sensors like crank and cam position sensors or knock sensors or stuff like that. They do this because those sensor signals are so important, and because minor fluctuations or deviations in that sensor signal can cause changes in how the engine operates or doesn't operate. You need to protect the electrical signal running through this line. Now, what happens is, electronics 101, okay, current going through a conductor creates a magnetic field. A magnetic field induced on a conductor creates current flow. So you have this inverse effect on each other. Basically what that means is, if I have this thick wire carrying current through, let's say it's a power supply, all right, we have 12 volts running through it, we have whatever 2 amps of current running through the wire. This wire is going to create a magnetic field around it. If there is a signal running through this wire, and say it's a very small, fine, and let's say low current signal on this wire, and it's going to the ECU, the magnetic field from this wire, because it is carrying a stronger current, and the voltage will be, say the voltages are different, say this is 5 volts, and then this is 12, and this is 1 amp, and this is 5 volts, and this is a very small amp, like 60 milliamps or whatever. This magnetic field will induce an interruption or noise, electrical noise or interference on this wire. causing a current flow on it, interrupting that signal, meaning that what gets back to the ECU is not what the ECU is expecting, and maybe the car misfires, or it adjusts timing incorrectly, or it doesn't start at all, or whatever the case may be. So there is, obviously, when the engineers design the wiring, they design the wiring and they take into account these interferences and these frequency fluctuations due to magnetic induction, and they calculate it out, and they work within parameters, and they program in the ECU what it's looking for, and they also, in their infinite wisdom, put redundancies inside of the wiring harness. You might find capacitors or condensers or things like that that will help with noise interference. Anyway, electrical noise interference. Another way of doing that is shielding a wire like this. This helps prevent interruption from magnetic fields, from opposing wires, and from this wire to other wires. Yes, the other way of doing it is, which you'll see a lot with CAN wiring, which won't be on this because this is an older engine, so you probably won't see it, but they will twist the wiring together. Yeah, there's not really anything here that I can show you for an example, but they'll twist the wiring together. The reason being, you'll see this from a lot of modern day German, European, modern day Japanese cars as well. But say you have your wiring routed through the harness like so, just generally, right? If this was CAN wiring or FlexRay wiring, most likely it would look something like this. Excuse me while I just plait my wiring on this. This is taking a lot longer than I thought. I should put it in a drill, just wind that bitch up. But anyway, the entire wiring harness is going to look like that, or the entire loom for that CAN line is going to look like that. This also reduces electrical interference and noise on the lines. All right, the reason they do that specifically on CAN lines, if they don't shield it, some FlexRay lines will be shielded, but the reason they do this on CAN lines is obviously because CAN is carrying data information, data packets, and those packets of information can be interrupted very easily. And then obviously in modern day cars, the whole car is like one big telecommunications network with different nodes communicating with different nodes, sending different messages about informations from different sections of the car, and it can get very complex, and you don't want any sort of interference with that. So that's what they will do when they wire up CAN wiring, for example. If you ever come across this and you need to do repairs, some people will tell you you can't repair CAN wiring. Some people say you can repair CAN wiring. Look, I'm not here to say who's right and who's wrong. I have repaired CAN wiring and it's been great. And I've done complete CAN wiring replacements. Either way, whatever you choose is up to you, as long as you do a good job and you're honest to your client, if you are doing it to a client, for a client. But just be honest about the repair you're doing and the pros and cons of that repair. Okay? The other side of that is, if you see wiring like this and you repair it, for everything that is holy in this land, make sure you do this to it again. If you unravel it to do a repair, if you do that, because you might have to unravel it to allow yourself some space to do a wiring repair or whatever the case may be, for all things that are good in this world, please make sure you do this again. All right? Number one, if you encounter problems later on, you may know where it's coming from, if it's a CAN issue or a signal issue, because you know you repaired on the wiring. But the next poor technician who works on that car, who doesn't know you repaired wiring, is not going to know that, and it's going to create headaches for them. Please, for all things that are good, do the same thing. Twist the wiring up again. All right? On a side note, I think another thing that's important to mention is, I don't know about other manufacturers, but one thing that I really liked when I started working with Audi is they really promote, when you're doing a wiring repair, just add the camera to me. They really promote, when you're doing a wiring repair, that you put a different colored insulation tape on the harness. Now, I don't mean the whole harness. I mean, you may do a wiring repair and you insulate the harness up and you put your sheathing over and you put your conduiting and it's black or whatever color you want, and you route it nicely and it looks neat. But you take a red or a yellow, what am I doing? I'll use this plumber's tape for example, but that's a waste. Plumber's tape is expensive. Let's just say for the sake of what's the word? For the sake of argument, this is yellow. It's not black, it's yellow. What you would do is, once you have completed your wiring harness repair, let's do this. Okay, I've repaired my wiring harness in here. I had an open circuit, I had a short from two wires touching each other. A rat or a homeless person came and ate through the wiring to get some nutrition. And I've repaired the wiring. Took the trunking off, repaired my wiring, put my trunking back on, and I've now taken my insulation, not this insulation, the normal insulation tape or material tape, and I've taped it all up and it's looking neat. What Audi does as a general rule is they say you just take a strip of yellow tape and you put it around the area, like so. Just one strip like this, okay? So the entire thing will be black, it'll be covered nicely, it'll look factory, and you'll just have one yellow stripe there. This is to indicate to other technicians and other people who work on the vehicle, probably more specifically in the VW group, that a wiring repair has taken place in this area. This is one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen, because if you're doing diagnosis on a vehicle and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with the car, and maybe you're having an intermittent fault where you're having a short circuit to ground or a range performance of a signal fault or something like that, and you kind of find the issue because you know that the fault is not occurring all the time, what you can do is, if you see that a wiring repair has taken place, and for example you know by looking at the wiring diagram that your harness for the sensor for the circuit runs through here, you can then surmise, or you can assume, which you shouldn't assume anything, but you can take an educated guess and deduce the fact that maybe there's something gone wrong with this repair, or maybe the repair wasn't done correctly, or maybe further damage has been done in this area. Human beings make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I forgot to do things. It happens. This just lets the person know, after you have worked in this area, that wiring repair work has occurred here, and you put it on the area you repaired. Some people put one here, trying to indicate that in the middle they've repaired. Some people like myself just put a tape over the section that I've repaired. You know it's in that area, and then you go have a look. It's just a really good thing when I started working with Audi that I really like that they do. And yeah, I think it really helps when you're looking at a car and you go, oh, a wiring repair has occurred. Yeah, I'm suspicious by looking at my wiring diagram and my fault and my data values and such things like that, and the freeze frame data and all that stuff for the fault. This is what I think is going wrong, so I'm gonna go have a look there, and hey, maybe the fault is there, or hey, maybe it's not, but look, I've checked it off the list, basically. Essentially. But anyway, nonetheless, I'm going to carry on here now and remove all this wiring. I've shown you guys how I do it, so I'm not going to go and do every single one. I'll do a recording of me just sped up doing it, and then you can, yeah, like and subscribe and watch the video. Oh, on a side note, you'll get some connector locks that do this. They don't come out, they don't move to the side, they just clip down, like so. Just a side note. So, up, locked, down, unlocked. Some will come out the side, some will come out the bottom, some will come out the top, some will only come out a bit, some will slide like this. And some you might find don't even have locks, you know? Wonderful world of connectors. Okay, so another thing is you might find these in the wiring, which are sort of joint connectors. This will happen mostly with powers and earths. As you can see, this is obviously, well, I wouldn't say it's obviously an earth because it's brown, because you'll be surprised in wiring diagrams when all of a sudden there's a red wire that's an earth. That also depends on switching circuits, but more on that another time. Basically like this just had a bit of insulation around it like that, which I don't really like. It's a bit, I don't know, cheap and not great. So what I'll do is, because I'm removing this wire, I'll clip it off here, and what I'll do is I will then take some tape, put some tape around it, and note this. And at a later stage I will then split this connector, put my own ferrule in there, and then shield it with heat shrink, just because it's a better connection. I mean, this is fine, it works, it doesn't do anything bad to the car, whatever, but it's just gonna bother me. So while I'm here, I'll probably end up going to all of these and just redoing them. Some of them you can do, some of them you can't do, because, well, you can do these as well, but just redoing these a bit better, and then just making it look a bit neater in general. Yeah, you might come across these in your wiring harnesses as well, which is a connector with just a cover or a plug cover on it. This is basically obviously maybe this connector is used for something else in a different market, whatever it may be. It could be anything in the engine wiring harness. It could be a separate function that this car didn't come with, so they just blank it off. Yeah, essentially they'll make one type of harness, or maybe 2 or 3 different types of harnesses for all kinds of models and makes of that same manufacturer, and you'll find a lot of these are not used and just taped up in the corner there, and it helps later on in life. You might be able to retrofit some things and code them to work, but essentially, yeah, that's all it's about.
I heard good man when I chat and chit. I come through like what's good, these wigs getting split. Man better breeze than sprint, it's long if I choose to bite down on these pricks. X is a lyrical 4-4 and this, so make sure it's X that you wanna rally with. Oh, make a big man turn to a kid. Shout out skull when I splat out wigs. Never seeing X's with your eyes closed, don't move past girls behind your eyelid. Bars and flows, check out their mixture. Tell them man can't handle the fixture. It's all fun and games to the person saying it's all fun and games. Get beat up and cocked out the picture. Must be active if you think you can wig me. I'll tell my man put down the liquor. I ain't got none, don't care which means I lost them. Genie's out of the bottle when I ain't going back, so now I'm a problem. They can't land, I'm a pro or column. Lyrically taking lives, I'm taking souls. Can see man's never been stolen. I take heads off, I leave them rolling, just like balls in bowling. I'm a fully charged in a machine like, man better be careful of me. I ain't just another MC, I'll spin your clock 360 degrees, flat line on set. Man, I need that to see she got a rating, but watch that decrease. Watch your whole team get smashed to pieces, don't puff out your chest like Reese's.
Another thing I wanted to show you guys, you might come across connectors that look like this on the inside. I don't know if you can see that, but you see it's all full of grease. It looks like schmutz. What I will show you is, where's the new Walker Vehicle Electronics? Yeah, that's my surname too. Anyway, you'll see inside here it's the same thing. I don't know if you can see that grease. So you'll come across some connectors, a lot of it will be on range switches or older cars on range switches. Mostly older cars are like this, where you'll find that. If you see that, don't be alarmed. It's actually completely normal. Most of the time it's like a dielectric grease or something like that. It's just basically to prevent the same thing. Just to prevent moisture buildup, connection issues, shorts between terminals. Like I said, you find it on range switches most of the time, just because I think, you know, it's responsible for sending the information of whether you're in drive, neutral, reverse, park, as well as it acts as the switch inhibitor. So if you have a short between your switch inhibitor signal and the line to actually the starter signal, you could potentially start the car while it's in gear, theoretically. You know, not only when it's in park for some reason, or it might not start at all because the signal just goes straight to ground. You know, electronics and electricity, or the fundamentals of electrical behavior, put it that way, is electron flow. So basically they're going to say electron flow will always find the easiest path to ground, or the path to earth or negative, through the least resistance, which is correct. But electrons flow, how do I put this without confusing you? When you start working on cars, or if you're an apprentice and stuff like that, you'll be taught positives, negatives, powers, earths. And for the sake of electrical engineering in the automotive industry, and for a lot of industries, for the sake of understanding, they'll explain it to you as power flows from the positive terminal through a load or a conductor to ground, negative. But on the basis of how electrons flow, electrons are negatively charged. Alright, so you will have a surplus of negatively charged electrons at the anode, which is the negative terminal of the battery, which will flow to the cathode, the positive terminal of the battery. So that being said, in actual fact, electrons are flowing from Earth to positive. So just keep that in mind. But basically what I'm trying to say is, I actually forgot what I was trying to say. I was just trying to clear that up anyway. But oh, that's what I was trying to say, that electrons will take the path of least resistance, but that doesn't mean to ground. Electrons don't flow to ground. They are negatively charged, so they will flow to the cathode, which is the positive terminal. So that's how a battery works. We'll talk about batteries later, but for the sake of this, for the sake of the automotive industry and wiring diagrams and stuff, we go against the conventional wisdom and scientific data, and we say that it flows from positive to ground. It just makes us easier for troubleshooting and such things like that. But anyway, so yeah, this plug fell apart. Another thing to keep in mind, a lot of these connectors are going to be old and brittle, especially I've noticed on German cars. They love this shit. But don't be discouraged if you start breaking it because the connector is really brittle. Don't beat yourself up about it. It happens. They get brittle. These plastic connectors are exposed to hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. In some cases, freezing temperatures in some regions of the world. And then extreme heat in some areas of the world, you know. So they will be brittle. They will break. Just try to find another one and replace them. If they got a part number on them, use the part number and see what you can do. But just keep in mind that don't get discouraged if they start breaking. If they stop breaking, it's not absolutely abnormal. Also, that doesn't mean attack it like a madman, all right? You know, you don't need to be a maniac when you're trying to deepin this. Just keep in mind that if you are going gentle and you are being patient and you're taking your time and it just starts falling apart because it's brittle, don't get upset with yourself and discouraged and say you don't know how to do it or what you're doing. Practice makes perfect. You'll get better at it. But sometimes if it just starts breaking, then man, get a new connector, you know. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. Harness is removed from the transmission start. We still got to do the EGR, but I'm not going to film that because it's really unnecessary. It's tedious removing the trunking and it's not really a major thing. We do have a lot of connectors that we need to replace, so I need to make a list of those. So this is where I wanted to get to my second thread. This is the transmission wiring harness for the Mitsubishi. Okay, this goes into the body harness of the car. And there is the range switch plug for the Mitsubishi, right? So now you'll see that when I've removed the wiring from this section and I've gotten here, I haven't removed these pins from the body harness. The reason being, I'm gonna first figure out what each pin is for exactly. Some of them come down here and are joint connected with other ones, like this green one, this black one, this red one, and another green one, no, another black one over here, and then there was another green which is over here, which will be different inputs for the engine control unit and maybe speedometer and so on and so forth, and gear selector position and things like that. So I've left that like that so that I can match it up to this and then wire it in a way so that it looks factory. How I'm going to do that I haven't really thought about yet. My plan is to get the harness stripped to where I want it, and then I can basically come up with a plan of how I'm going to wire everything together from there. On the other hand, you can see that compared to the Toyota Aisin transmission or control, this is a lot more primitive. I think this basically only has or requires throttle position and I think it might only be throttle position. I have to double check, but I think it's only throttle position in order to calculate engine load for downshifts, which is why I had to get this, which I think I've mentioned this before on my channel. But this little enhancer or voltage converter basically will just step up the voltage, because obviously the output that comes from this ECU is not exactly the same as what the input or output of this ECU is. Excuse the gloves. So they both, I'm pretty sure they're both a 5-volt reference signal. Still baking the old spray painted parts. I'm pretty sure they're both a 5-volt reference signal with regards to throttle position. But I think the Mitsubishi requires, or the Mitsubishi's transmission control unit requires a higher input signal from the engine control unit with regards to throttle position. So if you just wire it up using the ECU from, or the transmission control unit for the Toyota, you end up having no downshift, because it doesn't get to a threshold to sort of prompt that downshift. As well as the other thing I need to get as well is a new grommet for the bulkhead that will go through there. I may try reuse that one for the Mitsi, because that one is still in good condition and it'll fit that section of the bulkhead perfectly well, as well as with this harness. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm going to carry on pulling the EGR out, and yeah, then we'll see what else we need to do, and we'll take it from there. This I don't need right now. Just wanted to show you guys what's about. And yeah, I'll maybe remove a couple of components from here in order to start figuring out what do we need to do, because there's a lot of components I need to replace on the seals, wires, EGR, and figure out how I'm going to blank off some of the coolant lines and breather lines. I think that is a coolant line, but we'll get there eventually. It's a slow process. I haven't even started this engine nor done a compression test, so it's going to be a gamble on the day we try to get it running to see if it actually does run, and hopefully it does run, because I paid quite a pretty penny for it at the time. But yeah, sweet. Speak to you guys later. Okay, so whole harness has been completely detrunked, whatever the fuck you want to call it. All the insulation and covering and protective covers and loom and sheathing and trunking is all off. This is what an exposed wiring harness kind of looks like. Not much, but I mean, it is from a mid-90s Japanese car, so a lot more basic. But essentially, under all that insulation and covers, this is what your wiring harness looks like. Now you'll see when you do a job like this, it's good to just section off and clump the harnesses together, because luckily with older wiring harnesses like this, they've been in a position for so long that they tend to just stay in their form. So obviously this is one side of the head, this is the other side of the one side of the intake manifold, this is the other side of the intake manifold. This goes back down, and this is for one of the igniters, two of the igniters, and obviously, well, this is an airflow sensor or MS sensor, but you can see the plug is completely damaged, so that has to be repaired. O2 sensor, earth, injectors, starter signal, the throttle position. This is a switchover valve, vacuum switchover valve, another vacuum switchover valve, OBD1 diagnosis connector, and more injectors and coils and so on and so forth. And the only thing that I have still yet to find is the damn alternator connector. But anyway, regardless, so one thing I did do is, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross-reference the wiring layout for the range switch on these, okay, and I'm going to put it on the board, lay it out so I understand what's what, and then on the opposite side I'll have the Mitzi's layout, and then I'm going to figure out, when I tie them together, how the wiring is going to be. Oh, you got red, blue, and black whiteboard markers. So yeah, that's pretty much the plan of what I'm gonna do. Most of the hard plastic protective covers and trunking I've saved. I'll probably reuse most of that. But one thing that you should see is, so I brought the bucky. Yeah, they say ute in New Zealand, but where I come from we call it a bucky, bro. Anyway, that, if you can see, if I can show you, is all of the shit that came off of this wiring harness. All of the old insulation tape, and this is obviously the old bulkhead grommet, which I think the rest of it is down here somewhere. Yeah, as you can see, I didn't reuse this one, number one, because they put sound, or they installed sound in the car, and they had cut up the grommet to put the power cable through. Because honestly, I don't know why people do that. Why would you? Because they just open up moisture and water to get inside of your engine wiring harness and inside of your interior there. Like, its whole purpose is to steal off the outside environment and conditions from the inside of the cabin. Like, we just had a whole conversation about why the connectors are different between the outside and the inside because of the conditions. But anyway, I digress. If you're wiring up aftermarket sound system to your car, please, for the love of everything that is holy, just take your time and do it properly. That's all. Plan ahead. Visualize, plan. Visualize, plan. Visualize, plan. Take action. And then drink beer. So yeah, that's going to be me for now. I'm not going to make any more recordings. This is enough for today. It's just a brief overview of the wiring harness. I'm going to try make a bit more content going forward this year, but it's kind of hard because you got to save up money and then put money into it. So you know, a lot of the parts I order, because it comes from Rock Order in the States, it takes a very long time to get here. So there's delays, but I will try add more content up and maybe make it a bit more interactive with some information on technologies and how they work and what it does. I guess some people might want to know some more. And then yeah, but if you're watching, like and subscribe. You know, let me know in the comments down below if you want me to talk about anything in particular with regards to cars or technology or any sort of aspect of the engineering, and I'll try explain it all as best I can in layman's terms. Well, it will be in layman's terms because I'm an idiot. So yeah, but trust me, if I can understand this stuff, you can understand this stuff. You don't have to be a whiz. You don't have to be some, you know, university degree, you know, tertiary education, chemical engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, you know, with an IQ of 255 to understand it. It's really, it comes down to if you're passionate or not. If you're passionate about it, you'll get it. If not, find what you're passionate about and go after that, you know. But anyway, guys, peace, look after yourselves, and remember, visualize, plan, and take action. Execute.
Cause some came in the mail today.
Yeah, I did.
These nuts. Got him. Got him.
Here's my ruler.
This and I say, hold up, cock my glizzy, bang, bang.